How to decide your MVP, part 3, your minimum viable product. This is the third part in the series. It is going to be the last part. If you've made it, one more lesson to go. And this one, we're going to talk about how to define MVP functionality. What happens is once you decide what your MVP is, you've gone on, done some idea validation, and you're ready to build something. Well, exactly how do you go about building it, no matter what type of MVP you decided to build, right? And that can be a little bit of a vexing process because I work with founders all the time. We're building their MVP, and then their minds just start racing and they start going all the way down the path. You know, they start building features that are going to be needed like 1 year from now, 2 years from now, et cetera. So how do you stay focused? And how do you make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck and getting that traction, that momentum, so that you can attract investors, or even better, make money? As I heard Ryan Rattan, Startup Therapy podcast, which I highly recommend, check out Startup Therapy podcast. He said, the best investor is revenue. And I'm totally a fan of that. You're going to get to know me and you're going to realize I don't like investors anymore. I've done the whole investors thing. I still have investors in different startups, but the stuff that I'm building what I call the unicorn, YO unicorn, based on me. I don't want to work with investors. In fact, I don't even want to work with co-founders, but that's neither here nor there. Co-founders are important. I'm not poo-pooing that, or investors. But what I'm saying is, if you can figure out a way to generate the revenue so that you can attract investors, but you don't need investors, how do you figure that out? Well, here is what we can do in terms of defining MVP functionality. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about problem prioritization, feature roadmap, how to create a feature roadmap, and how to track and calculate progress. Once again, disclaimer, there are many methodologies out there. People will want to do things in different ways, and one advisor will tell you something different than other advisor. I'm just speaking from my experience and the different things that I was able to do. I have experienced 2 exits, so I know enough to build a product. In fact, I had a 3rd exit, kind of, but that crashed and burned in being a publicly traded company. But neither here nor there, I digress. Just trying to establish a little bit of credibility when I talk about the methodology. But as always, you should do your own research and you should ask around and see if these things line up. But here is how I like to do it, building a feature roadmap, and then how to track and calculate progress. Okay, so let's jump in. So what's important to establish right away is something called the 50-50 rule. And I live and die by this rule. And it's 50-50. So evenly divided your time and resources between development and distribution loops. So these little cycles. And this comes from the lean startup methodology, which is build, measure, learn. So what you do is you build something and then you measure it, and then continuous learning. Now, I often will put try, measure, learn, because you may not be building anything, right? So I'll just say try, measure, learn. So try something. If people, founders will ask me, well, should I do this? I'll say, I don't know, try it. Like, try it in a way that you can reinforce a continuous learning loop, which is half development, half distribution. Let's go back to development distribution. It means that half your time is in development and half your time is in getting it out there and getting feedback. So Y Combinator always says, as founders, you do 2 things. Well, actually, 3 things. They amended it, but it was always ship product, and talk to users, which is the distribution. And then exercise and sleep right and take care of yourself as a founder. So if you put half of the time in development, a lot of founders say, but Ed, I need to finish my product before I get out there. And my answer is no, you don't. You can finish half of what you're doing and then spend the other half getting out there, showing people, etc. So in my experiences, the MVPs that I'm building is, my card game, which, I keep talking about through this series. I'm putting it out there and we're playing like I'll develop something halfway and, all the graphics won't be done, but we'll go out and play it anyway. Or I'll show the artwork to it. I will walk people through. I'll pitch it and explain it and do videos on it, etc. When I could spend 100% of my time just working on the product, what happens is you work on it and then you got this big ta-da, this big reveal, which nobody would want. People might not actually want it or need it. And so you want to develop and distribute 50-50 equally, and that actually speeds up your development, your continuous learning, because you're always getting feedback and you're putting that into what you're building, and you can adjust your product and it works quite well. You can avoid a lot of mistakes. So what happens, think of it this way. They did this experiment. They said, what's better if you had to like stuff 1,000 envelopes? What's better? Should you print all the paper, then fold all the paper at once, 1,000 pieces of paper, then stuff 1,000 envelopes, etc., and go do that? What's going to be faster? Well, technically, you could pretty much do it the same way, doing assembly line and going, first, let's take one envelope, print it, fold it, stuff it, lick the envelope, put the stamp on it, get it out, and address it. The reason the second method is a lot more efficient and more effective is because what if you made a mistake? What if you realized halfway through that, wait a second, we got the wrong size envelope, or we did a typo, or different things like that? If you did it all at once, what happened is you would have to go and redo all that, and you've lost a lot of resources and a lot of time. So doing it one station at a time, which is the entire kind of lean methodology, the Kaizen, continuous improvement stuff that happened out of Japan, which made Japan just, superior back in the day in terms of innovating for, automotive industry, because they were building one car at a time, right? Versus these huge things where they're building like 10,000 cars at a time. So you want to build something, measure. So you spend half your time building, half your time measuring, and then that makes 100% of your time continuous learning. So maybe you spent half your time, and let's divide it up. You spend half your day, punching away and creating something, building it. And then the rest of the half a day, you're showing it to people, getting their feedback. What do you think so far? And then guess what? They say, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, or that's a really good feature. And you might be building one thing and they say, no, I really like that feature over there. You're like, oh, I need to focus on that. So you can have this continuous loop, and it literally turns into a loop. It is literally, build, measure, and then learn. Okay. So, learn. This is a terrible circle. I don't know what I'm doing right there. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so you have build, measure, learn. This is the way I should have. So you build, okay, then you measure, and then you learn, and then you figure out what to build next. So that's the continuous feedback loop. So that's what you're going to do. So always remember 50-50, literally block your time out. And as you're building your MVP, go the 50-50 methodology. All right. So then how do you prioritize what problem you're solving? Because most likely there's lots of different things that you can do in terms of what am I going after. So you want to figure out what is the one problem out of the many you probably identified. And usually big problems have like sub problems in there. And you want to figure out how to solve a problem based on 2 out of the 3. Here's what I mean. When I was working in motorsports and retail, we had this sign that says, you can get it good, fast, or cheap. Pick 2 out of the 3. So if you want it good and fast, it's not going to be cheap. If you want it fast and cheap, it's not going to be good. If you want it good and cheap, it's not going to be fast, type thing, right? So pick the 2 out of the 3. So what I do is I figure out, okay, what problem, and I bucket the problems that I'm solving with my MVP, and I say, can I make it good? And here's where there's a difference between 10x quality and 10% quality. Okay, 10x is 1 order of magnitude better, and 10% is I just made a better mousetrap by 10%, right? And in startup land, you need to go 10x. Something has to be an order of magnitude better than the other solution out there. In small business, which is completely valid, I wouldn't judge you at all if you said, no, our solution is just going to be 10% better. Well, then just build towards 10% quality. Just warning you now, if you have a 10% solution, you're not going to get startup investors. You could get other types of investors who are interested in investing in small businesses, but you're not going to get, that VC firm that's looking for that 10x category defining idea. So that's how that works. So you can make it good, and or you can make it fast. So how you decide to make it fast is, what can I do to remove friction to make it more efficient, right? So Uber is like, instead of calling a cab and waiting for it, and also I click a button, my location is here, and you remove the friction, right? And so I would say Uber is kind of good and fast. They're not cheap. It's comparable. I don't think they're cheaper than taxis. Maybe they are, but it's just a better ride to sit in somebody's car and all that stuff. And it's fast, and you remove the friction from it. And so you can just pay regular rates, and what have it might be a little cheaper. Who knows? We can try applying it, to different things. But what I'm always trying to do is figure out what of the three dimensions. So if it's cheap, you want to 10x the value. So if someone's going to spend $1,000 on something, how can you deliver it for $100? So you can show the 10x value. So these are the problems that I'm going after, and they usually fall in these three buckets. Can I make it better, make it good by 10x? Can I make it faster, or can I make it cheaper? That's pretty much how you can decide which problem you're going to go after. All right. So I can't advise you, because I'm not sitting on your startup, but type thing like, in my gaming startup, I'm looking for, really good and fast. And there's a reason for the game mechanics and everything, but it's definitely not cheap. But I'm being challenged right now, because they're like, maybe cheaper is better. Do I basically give my game away, and sacrifice something in terms of making it faster, what have you? But then also, in terms of the other SaaS products that I'm going for, I'm definitely not going cheap. I'm going good and fast. So being a 10x value in terms of the quality, and getting them to the result faster, because time is money when it comes to this type of product, like an executive coaching product, trying to figure out, right? And so these are the things I'm trying to always analyze the different dimensions. So what you do is you just kind of go and you say, okay, what's my product, and look through, can I make it good, better, 10x better, faster, or cheaper? All right. So that's the first step. That's what you want to do. Next is then, how do you develop the feature roadmap? So you're kind of in the general direction. You're like, okay, maybe I want to make something that's good and cheap, right? And so it's not going to be fast. Well, now that you know the dimensions, you want to plan the features that allow you to fail early, fail fast, and fail cheap. Kind of close to the previous dimensions. What does that mean? I want to invest the minimal amount in a feature where I can push it and decide whether it's failed. If it's failed, and how fast can I get there, and how cheap can I make that failure? That's the important aspect. So these are the things that I'm thinking through. So again, if I go back to my, little MVP, I can fail early, fail fast, fail cheap. In fact, in one session, I can know if whether this mechanic holds any mustard whatsoever for my kids. I can make this super fast. Use a Sharpie, and I didn't even use scissors. I just kind of ripped the paper, right? And then I can make it cheap. This is totally cheap. So this is my first feature set, and I can fail early, fail fast, fail cheap. Again, that's the reason that I love doing things manually, because I can learn very quickly if it's going to fall apart, and I can get it out to market before having to have coders and put it in there. And it's cheap. It's cheaper for me to do it on Photoshop than to go hire a programmer, etc. Now remember, 50-50 rule. So spend 50% of your time building something that'll fail early, fail fast, fail cheap, and 50% of the time going out and measuring people's responses to it and seeing if it indeed invalidates or invalidates, what you're thinking about. All right. So let's go back and review, because I'm thinking that you might get lost a little bit. So you want to pick the problem, and how you're doing is you're figuring out, can I make the solution good, fast, or cheap? Pick 2 out of the 3 in general. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just, you want to go in that, direction, right? It's very difficult to do something good, fast, and cheap, just letting you know. And these dimensions will help you determine your runway, what you're going to do, especially in deciding the features, which is now, what features can I build next that'll help me fail early, fail fast, fail cheap? You may be thinking, but Ed, you're just actually, encouraging us to fail. Yes, I am. Here's the reality. Most founders, their first, hit, very rarely do they get it off the bat. Most founders, their first MVP is wrong. That's the reason you make it an MVP, minimum viable product, so you can fail early, fail fast, fail cheap. I've made a ton of mistakes just in this, but guess what? My prototypes are only like $20 a piece. And I've got a lot of card games sitting on a trash pile in recycling. But those failures, they got me early, fast, and super cheap to do, versus me going out and saying, okay, I'm going to hire a programmer and get them working on the video game right away. No, my feature roadmap is really truncated down to the 50-50 rule: fail early, fail fast, fail cheap. That's how that works. So then next, how do you track and calculate the process? Well, what you do is you have to pick up a North Star. Now, I put the word context in there because context is important. The context of your startup is going to determine what the North Star is, right? And here's some examples. Revenue is always the best, but not necessarily. Downloads, active users, signups. Downloads are good at a certain stage, but active users is going to be more important because you're going to have churn, right? But then the worst one, but it is a validated metric, is if you got a landing page, a certain type of MVP. The context of your MVP is a landing page. Signups could just be just as good to show someone, hey, people are signing up for your weekly newsletter or to be informed, all of that stuff. So, if you look at kind of the priorities, and there are other things, like if you're a fintech, assets under management, and if you're a SaaS platform, how many transactions that you have inside the company, the uptake, etc. Then what you do is you measure the weekly growth, okay, or it's hyper growth. Now, here's the distinction. Startups are known for hyper growth. What does that look like? About 10% a week, 30 to 40% a month type thing. Then what's happening is, if you are growing at that rate, you've got hyper growth because it gets exponential. That's where your hockey stick growth comes from. And you're trying to figure out measuring so you know where you stand in terms of problem solution fit and product market fit. So once again, pick a North Star for your MVP and measure it, and then hold yourself accountable and say, every week, I'm going to figure out how to improve that metric on a week-to-week basis. Okay, so that's how that works. All right. Now, the question is going to become, well, what then, like, how do I know? How do I know whether I problem solution fit or product market fit? Okay. And I'm kind of jumping in advance. I did say this was the last lesson, so I'm going to put it all in there for you. You want to watch your runway and measure it against your progress from problem solution fit to product market fit. So let's define each one. Problem solution fit is when you have identified the right problem and you put a solution and they fit together, and aha, I solved the problem. Now, there are many companies that have products that solve problems but aren't successful because they haven't figured out what product market fit is. Product market fit brings in the things like distribution, word of mouth, availability. Can you maintain quality consistently? You actually have to build a company around your problem solution fit at this time. And a lot of founders don't know how to, build the company. And this is customer acquisition, automation, and etc. Right? And here's the key. So many people mistake this. They make this mistake. They think problem solution fit, just because your product solves a problem and people say, wow, it did it for me, doesn't mean you have product market fit, because the distribution hasn't happened. It's not going on an exponential scale. That's the reason we go back to the 50-50 rule, because by now you've got all the insights that you need to create 50-50. At this stage, though, you want to get to the point. Forget about scaling and making millions of dollars, etc. You want to get to the place where you have achieved ramen profitability. What is that? Well, you're profitable enough that you as the founder can't take a salary, but you can eat ramen noodles. That's courtesy of Y Combinator, Paul Graham, Y Combinator. I like that, ramen profitability. If you can build your MVP and you can show investors that you've achieved ramen profitability with it, believe me, you will get investors. Okay. They will sign up because this is a very rare thing. So many startups need investment to get to profitability. But if you can build your MVP in a way and say, you know what, this, I barely eke out $1 profit. Like, can you get ramen noodles for $1? Possibly, $2, okay, for a package of ramen noodles. And I can eat 3 times a day because now I'm making $6. That's ramen profitability. That's where you want to get to. Okay. So that should be it. I encourage you to review all these lessons. We are available for office hours and all that other stuff. I hope this has been helpful in taking you through the journey of the MVP. This has been the series. Last video. I'll see you in the next series, though, as we talk about other things to help you on your founder journey. Thanks again.